That the campaigning policies of the Students' Union are in fact SWSS policies?
Well, basically because SWSS on the campus has a definite sort of orientation around union activity. We don't just concentrate merely on building SWSS as a sort of, campaigning body of itself, but actually want to involve students in the sort of campaigns that affect them on the campus. And as SWSS is an organisation of militants, if you like, who are prepared to organise, one of the main focuses for that organisation are obviously UGMs, where policy can be passed, and we can, also present a platform for our own ideas about how best to fight over this, that, or the other issue. So, given that specific orientation around student union politics, it's important that an organisation like SWSS does actually campaign very hard to get the sort of policies and the sort of means of the way we go about fighting for those policies, like no platform or ultra vires, onto the union's mandate. And it's really as a consequence of the level of activity of SWSS members and their preparedness to go out and argue and be willing to argue very hard for their position at UGMs on specific issues, that most of the policy, once it is presented in that way, given the amount of propaganda that SWSS produces, the amount of leaflets, the weekly meetings it has, that it's no surprise that students can be won over to those ideas, and that does obviously follow into a lot of union policy.
Now, SWSS and the Labour Club, why does SWSS go along to the Labour Club?
Basically because we're not a sect. We don't say that we're revolutionary purists and that the only criteria on which you can be a member of SWSS is that you've read the selected works of Lenin or Trotsky. But that SWSS is an organisation distinct from the SWP, which I'm a member, is founded upon the idea that there are militants around the campus who are prepared to fight on specific issues, and that the audience that we're going to get for the type of ideas we're going to put forward for fighting on campaigns mainly lie to people around us, and a lot of those people are obviously in the Labour Club. There are obviously people in between. There's an anarchist group, and there's the women's group, there's the gay SOC and people like that who can also be asked to join in with those campaigns. But essentially the Labour Club is the biggest grouping of socialists on campus, and it's no surprise therefore that we go along and argue our case in those meetings.
Now, what's the relationship between the broad left, and by that I also mean the Labour Club, on campus and SWSS? I mean, would you see SWSS as the trailblazers, for people who provide leadership, or what? Or how would you see it?
Well, I mean, in terms of reality, in getting the two occupations off last term, in the amount of activity there is on SWSS members' behalf, if you like, but carried out by SWSS members, that SWSS do provide necessary leads when campaigns come up. They also provide means about the means of going about fighting those campaigns. It's no surprise therefore that we do, are seen, if you like, to be an active core of the left, as distinct from members, say, of the Labour Club or the anarchist group or the other societies that are based around sort of left issues. Our relationship to them is obviously that we are willing to fight with them and join in the campaigns that crop up, and that it's important that we do have a dialogue with them, and that's why we go along to Labour Club meetings, or if a campaign around the women's issue, we'd obviously want to work with them as well and get support on our motions, or give speeches with those societies at UGMs and things.
If there was an organised left within the Labour Club which had any credibility, do you think that SWSS's job would be harder in providing the leadership from the left, and do you think you'd have less success in being able to put forward SWSS ideas on a union platform?
Not at all, because like I said earlier, we don't consider ourselves to be a sect. Our main emphasis is winning the sort of arguments on campus that go on around specific issues, like no platform, like ultra vires, like the need for a strong fighting union, and we realise that we are a minority on the campus, so it's even more crucial that we do have a dialogue with left groups. The fact that there would be an organised left organisation within the Labour Club would probably help us in that task, because one of the problems with the Labour Club is that it is constituted by all sorts of different political elements. and that it is far harder for left-wingers in the Labour Club to win arguments about how best to go about fighting over issues. So an organised section of the Labour Club who were willing to share some of the perspectives and politics that SWS do when they go out onto a campaign would help us. We don't really want to sit on our own and be isolated off, and obviously we're not. But I mean, in that sense, an organised, clear political perspective within the Labour Club would not only help the Labour Club in terms of it being able to build more effectively and have more influence on campus, but would also in turn help us, because it would involve, obviously, more people.
How has SWS developed in the last 2 years?
Well, it has obviously got a lot bigger than it was when I first got here. But essentially the routine work that SWS do, the week meetings, the bookstall, the paper sales across campus haven't changed. The way they have changed is that because we've got more people, we're obviously able to do a lot more. In terms of politics, the SWS line, if you like, over most of the issues hasn't changed dramatically as a result of our change in size. What it does mean is that we can, that we do obviously represent a fair larger proportion of students on the campus, and that we do carry a lot more weight when it comes to fighting around specific issues that crop up.
How has the Labour Club developed since you came here?
In two ways, really. In as much as it's become a lot more of an active body on the left, it's the influence of groups like Socialist Organiser within the Labour Club has obviously helped the Labour Club move much more to the left. The problem now is that with the defeat of the miners' strike and the resurgence of arguments about supporting Kinnock and the sort of policies that he represents, that the Labour Club will, drift back into its, issue politics and, just basically campaigning around electoral politics rather than on issues which crop up, and that tendency may be seen within the Labour Club, although there are obviously elements within it who will still be prepared to work with us on specific campaigns. But I think generally, the shift will be, the shift that's likely is that the Labour Club will actually become more and more vulnerable to the sort of ideas that Kinnock represents, and that way of fighting, that electoral positions are far more important than getting students involved in campus politics.
To what extent do you think that the popularity or the position of individuals affects the way the Labour Club works? To what extent is it the tool of certain individuals and dependent on the strong points or weak points of certain individuals?
I said earlier that the Labour Club really is it's like a broad church. There are all sorts of varying tendencies or points of view that are expressed within the Labour Club, and really because it doesn't have a clear or well-defined policy as to how you go about fighting around this, that or the other, the individuals in it can dominate, be it on the basis of their experience, their ability to articulate arguments or whatever, that really is a result of their lacking a certain degree of a political perspective when it comes to organising on the campus. It can be used by people who really are nothing more than careerists, and that is a tragedy in itself. But even having said that, there are obviously a core within the Labour Club of people who are willing to work, as socialists and not as people who want to get full-time posts on NUS or in the Labour Party. It's not surprising that happens, given the inconsistency there is in the views within the Labour Club.
Now, I'd like you just quickly to describe for me the occupation at the Guildhall.
Well, the Guildhall was the second occupation we had in the first term of this academic year, 84-85. And it was basically as a response to Keith Joseph's so-called climb down over the grants issue. And there was a campaign basically that said, look, the issue of grants is still on the agenda, and it's important that students still go out and fight for a decent grant and no interference from the government, and against cuts in courses or whatever. So that was the basis of the campaign. Given that so many people were involved in the Heslington Hall occupation which preceded it, and that there was, it was just a period of weeks really between the two occupations, it wasn't surprising that there was a decline in the numbers involved. I think about 100, 150 people went initially into the Guildhall occupation, but because the Guildhall obviously wasn't as good a focus for the campaign as Heslington Hall was, i.e. you couldn't go out and produce thousands of leaflets, do door-to-door campaigns across campus, that a lot of people obviously did feel fairly demoralised by the experience of sitting in a big cold shed in the middle of York. So really, although it did draw in a lot of attention from the local press and the media nationally, the Guildhall didn't have the same sort of effect upon weakening the admin's position or making them change their views as would an occupation of Heslington Hall. But again, it did involve a good number of militants on the campus who were prepared to go out and leaflet York very successfully. The only thing was that as a place to occupy, it really had no leverage. It was arranged with the Labour Council that we should go in there. Peter Smith wasn't particularly worried that 150 students had gone down to occupy an old museum in York. In that sense, it was a lesser of the two options as to whether to go into Heslington Hall or a place in town.
How does SWSS build for a particular campaign, for instance an occupation or an EGM, for instance the one on Monday? How do they physically build for it? What sort of, what do they do, if you like?
Well, SWSS as an organisation on the campus has a much clearer perspective as to how you go about building campaigns than most of the other societies, basically because we learn...
Please don't touch that plug.
Which one's plugged into?
It's plugged into the video machine.
And given that that's our main priority, it's important that we, get out with enough information about the campaign, what the issues involved are, and who we can actually contact and involve in building for those campaigns as they crop up. But you can't just do that on the basis of a few individuals who have committed themselves to maybe wanting to fight over this, that or the other. Really, it's a problem of organising the best militants on campus, and to do that, SWSS holds caucuses over a specific issue. It has a caucus before a UGM where the arguments are gone through, people who want to speak on specific issues work out the sort of arguments that we're going to present. The organisation is, it's like a division of labour within SWSS over leaflets, posters, and going out to individuals across the campus who we might be able to involve in that campaign. Really, it's a question of being able to work very quickly as issues crop up, and to do that, SWSS needs to be a very...
But I just want to ask you one more question. Has the left ever been stronger, yes or no? But Alex has got to cue you up for that. Do you think the left is stronger than it has been at the moment? Do you think it has? So I want a yes.
Just a yes.
Just a yes.
On the way.
On a cue.
Right. Yes.
SWSS and SWSS